6 of us that worked the outside of 10 plants that we had out there, exchanges. And there was 2 of them were technicians at that time. 3 of them were technicians at that time, and the other 3 worked on the crew, which I started out in the crew for 2 years, and then I became a technician too. But there was a total of just the 10 of us, 4 in and 6 out for quite a few years. That took care of the whole thing. 80s. I was the first exchange in Randall to become Touchstone.
Okay.
That was the first one of all our exchanges.
When they incorporated in 50, all those companies were separate. The Motley Telephone Company was separate. That's when they came together. And then I think they were run underneath Crow Wing Power Cooperative. And then they hired their own manager probably 2 years after they got the loan, something like that. Because I think he was here about 9 years before Don Johnson took over. And didn't he take over in 62?
Horseshoe around the area. So when Jerry talks about when we put in the phone lines and had party lines, that was back in these areas right here: Randall, Lincoln, Motley, Pillager, Leader, Noke Lake, Sullivan Lake, and Outing. How we got our start there was the Bell companies back in the day weren't interested in going out to the rural areas because it just wasn't cost effective for them to do it. So co-ops started to crop up, and as Jerry alluded to, the farmers got together and started selling membership to the co-op. And that is how they got the financial start to start putting in these lines in. And the farmers, I think, were the ones that actually started installing it.
Yep.
Would go out and fix them and work on hanging them on the poles and everything, because they couldn't get service otherwise if they hadn't done that. So the Bell companies were in the Brainerd, Baxter area and so forth, and the co-op started.
And at that time, Brainerd Baxter were basically a black hole for good connectivity. They didn't have good DSL. There was a number of competitors, but the competitors were not putting new cables in the ground. They were just renting cables from, at that time, US West, Quest. And so we got to visiting, and we catapult forward. Jerry Walseth had heard all of these, I guess, these woes that we were saying that Brainerd Baxter had. Because at that time, Consolidated Telephone was already offering DSL service, and so was Crosslake Communications, and so was Emily Co-op. So you had neighboring smaller companies offering this, and yet So Mr. Walseth and the school board, they were in the midst of having the citizens vote on the very large bond referendum for Forest View. You know, it was 50 million plus. Well, they had the foresight to earmark money in that bond referendum, which passed, a bunch of dollars for infrastructure, for technology infrastructure. And so he was able, between him and the school board, they devised a plan to put up money to put a fiber ring around Brainerd and Baxter. And their first goal was to connect all the school buildings so that they could have good interconnectivity between all the buildings. But Jerry had the vision that in order to do this, we know we had other problems. We didn't have fiber optics to the hospital. We didn't have fiber optics to Crow Wing County offices, or Brainerd City Hall or Baxter City Hall. So he was able to go out and find them and introduce them to a potential partnership in this whole thing. And to help build this infrastructure, this basically 37 miles of fiber optic ring, and then a lateral all the way up to the Nisswa School. And so then they put it out for bid for service providers to partner with the school district to build it and maintain it. And so their first bid, we did bid on it the first time, we were not selected. They selected another company that was run out of a different state, and they awarded them the the bid in something like February of 2003, because the referendum, I think, passed in 2002, late 2002. They negotiated a service agreement from that time until almost the end of October, and they could not come to an agreement. And so the school district then put it back up for bid. Never done this back in 2004 if we didn't have the support of the board of directors. There was risk involved here. And quite frankly, we knew there was risk, but it was really hard to quantify how much risk. Well, and it's all paid off. But that's easy to sit here 10 years later and say, what a great project. But there was some real discussions around this table about, how are we going to make this work and what are our feelings. And if we wouldn't have had the support of the board of directors, none of this would have happened. None of this would have happened. I mean, we could have had a board of directors that would be so conservative, says, we just can't do that. That's too far out of our realm. And it's flourished because they gave us the ability, and they gave us, over the last 10 years, CTC in the Brainerd, Baxter, Nisswa areas, we've probably invested over $25 million in 10 years, over those years. Not all at once, but it takes a lot of capital to build fiber optics and maintain it. Yeah. So it's a huge investment into this community. Yeah. I don't think we would have projected it 10 years ago. They would have hit 25 million, but over time, the process that we developed and the ability to make little business plans in these different areas helped us move forward. And